Welcome, everyone, to this week's edition of Military Trailblazer Office Hours. This week, I'm on location in Boston, in Cambridge, and so getting out of the house a little bit. Thank you for taking time out of your Wednesday evening to spend it here in the spirit of community, mentorship, and, of course, learning. As always, I'm your host, Dave Nava. I'm a lead solution engineer at Salesforce, and like many of you, I'm a military trailblazer. Each week, we invite a co-host or sometimes co-hosts to take part in the conversation so we can leverage their experience, their expertise, and their unique perspectives. The focus for tonight's session is pretty exciting. We're going to be exploring the employee engagement and event career path. All right, so what I'd like to do now is welcome and briefly introduce our co-host for tonight's session, Teri Landers. Teri has been with Salesforce for nearly 8 years. She began her Salesforce career in employee success. So by all means, if you have questions about employee success, and I know there's folks out there that do, hit her up. In 2016, she transitioned to employee engagement and events, initially as a specialist and now as a manager. Teri, it's great to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you, David. Hi, everybody. This is like a new group to me, and it's really great to see faces. How's everybody doing?
Awesome.
Good. Great. Awesome. Thanks for having me. David.
Yeah, my pleasure. Do you want to take a moment and further introduce yourself and kind of share your Salesforce story for the group?
I would love to. So as David said, my name is Teri Landers. I'm an employee engagement and events manager for AMER. I sit in Indianapolis, Indiana. Been with Salesforce. It'll be 8 years in May. So a little bit about how I got here. I kind of was at a job that I hit the glass ceiling and networking and knew some people, and they were like, oh, you really need to come work at Exact Target. Exact Target was what Salesforce is now in Indianapolis. Leaving a job of 11 years, I thought, oh gosh, I don't know if I want to go into that tech world. It's so scary, it's totally unstructured. I made the leap of faith, getting my foot in the door, being an administrative assistant of all things, which I was clearly not qualified to do at all. But the patience of the woman I was working for was fantastic. Got into that job for about 6 months or so when Salesforce really took over, and we kind of switched everything over to Salesforce. So I went from Exact Target to Salesforce thinking, oh my gosh, I just landed the coolest job ever, because Salesforce is like huge. And it wasn't on my radar. It just happened. So really fortunate. And then through that acquisition, I was able to kind of get my feet in the door, figure out where I wanted to be. And I really moved myself into this employee engagement role. So here I am today. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great. I appreciate the context, Teri. And I do want to circle back to that here in a few minutes and talk about how kind of you prepared from that, non-tech role to a tech role, because I'm sure a lot of folks on the call, myself included, when I was transitioning, have the same situation where we're wondering, how do we make that transition? So we'll definitely dive into that a bit more.
Yeah.
Before we do, we'll go ahead and cover some admin items for folks that may be joining for the first time. So for those folks, it's great to see you. I always like to briefly explain the purpose of office hours before we open the floor for questions and discussion. And so these sessions are absolutely yours. They're an informal get-together to gather with military trailblazers, but also allies. Everyone's welcome to explore non-technical Salesforce career and branding related topics, basically to help you achieve your professional development and career related goals. So over the next hour, this is your opportunity to take part in collaborative mentorship, where everyone on the call is encouraged to step up if you want to, and participate in the conversation and help answer questions from your perspective, which obviously will add additional diversity of experience to the answers given. So as I do every week, please keep an eye on the chat window. I'll be posting things, and I already have been, things that I've collected from LinkedIn, from Twitter, and from various blog sites over the course of the week that talk about opportunities for volunteering, for employment, maybe for learning. And if you have those as well, please feel to push those out. And then I would also encourage everyone, if you want to put your LinkedIn information in the chat window at any point during tonight's session to connect with folks, feel free to do so. And I know that Elio is thinking this, so I'm just going to voice it. If you do send someone a connection request on LinkedIn, be sure to provide them with a quick message indicating who you are and why you're connecting, so that you give them context and you're much more likely to get your connection approved. And so if you want to ask a question during tonight's session, again, this is your session. That's why we're here. Go ahead and post that in chat if you don't feel comfortable speaking up. But if you do, you can raise your hand in the Google Meet application, and I'll call on you in order. And so with that, admittedly, Teri, I don't know a whole lot about employee engagement at events. And so if you could talk to the various entry-level roles to give everyone a perspective for what employee engagement events career path is and what those various roles entail, that would be fantastic.
Yeah. Well, let me start off by saying first, since I get to stare at myself, this is not dirt on my head. If any of you are Catholic out there, today is Ash Wednesday, where we get ashes on our forehead. So I'm getting this like wonderful look at myself going, oh, these people probably think I'm just really dirty. I was like cleaning my furnace or something. No, it was Ash Wednesday. So that's what's going on there. Employee engagement. Yeah. What is employee engagement? It has a lot to do with culture, right? What is our culture of Salesforce? And the way that we create the culture is by our employees. It's getting them involved in things that are beyond their desk. So beyond things that are, part of your day in and your day in job, day out job, when you're working, when you're with your teams, getting up and walking away, or perhaps in our virtual world, it's like logging into something else. Maybe it's a trivia night or, a food prep kind of activity. Maybe it's playing some of our games on Slack that we have during big events like CKO or Dreamforce and winning prizes. It's employee engagement is really just getting all of you and myself out of what we do on a daily basis and being part of that culture and just being part of what's around us. I can certainly say that COVID has really kind of changed what employee engagement is. And you guys can probably agree with me. It used to be, happy hours after work, lunch and learns, right? Speakers, things that we're doing in person. COVID changed all of that. We basically went to, how can I have employee engagement virtually? What we're doing right now would be considered employee engagement. Here we are, we're all online, we're all talking with each other, we're learning things, we're interviewing, weird people with ashes on their heads, it's a virtual world. I personally was getting a little tired of the virtual world. I don't know if you all are. Can't wait to really get back into person and really drive home that employee engagement though. Did that help a little bit?
Yeah, that definitely provides context. And Salesforce is known for its culture. It's one of the reasons why I joined and one of the reasons why I stay. And so it's great to know that there is a career field out there where that's kind of your primary focus, is creating those cultural experiences that keep people coming in and keep people staying.
So I guess part two of that, David, I didn't answer was, where do you start, right? What's an entry level, right? How do you get in? Right. How do you get into it? So, it's funny. There's a lot of things about Salesforce that are kind of unique. And this situation and employee engagement is exactly that. There's really not a huge beginning to end journey. It's almost like it's kind of created along the way, which is super interesting. So let me go back. When I first started employee engagement, it was a team of folks, and we were basically HR or employee success, right? So we were kind of all in that bubble. And within that bubble were things such as benefits, our health and benefits, insurance, gym memberships, just kind of it was those types of things. That's kind of how it was. So when I originally got my foot in the door, it was mostly like, okay, I need to promote some of these really great benefits that we have to our employees, because when they utilize these benefits, then they're being engaged, and that's kind of what we're going to do. Well, the story kind of broadened, right? So it became more like, it's not so much benefits anymore and insurance. It's really like being the voice, getting people together. Like I said, maybe it's, the gym that Salesforce sponsors, or a workup class. And I'm saying, hey, everybody come together. Let's do this. So I started becoming that voice of like, come along, let's go do this together. Most of the stuff was part of our benefits package or part of our perks. So that's kind of how this position started evolving. Then what ended up happening is we keep growing and we're growing and growing. And I really can't so much be like, hey, let's come along with me anymore. It's not so personalized. We're doing events on such a huge scale right now. So my role became more of, wow, look at all these really cool events Salesforce is doing up here at HQ. And I'll say things like Dreamforce, CKO, our Can't Be Well series, all of these things that are happening, how do we push them down into the markets so that everybody feels it? And it's not just up here. It's not just, headquarters. And so then my job became, okay, Teri, how can you get the folks in your area, your employees, involved in company kickoff, involved in Dreamforce? Here's some budget, what can you do? So then it became more events. Now I'm planning events that are more specific to markets. And that kind of started that process a little bit. Where it goes from here, it just keeps getting bigger. So, I'm at a manager level now where now I look at these events and I'm like, okay, this is what we're doing in the markets to help employees feel engaged. Now I've got a team that works with me, and I help that team do the things that I was doing when I first stepped in, not so much with benefits anymore, but with the programming that's now kind of more black and white, until they also start, getting a little bit more momentum and more momentum.
Yeah, that definitely helps, Teri, and I appreciate the clarification. We've got a few questions and a raised hand, so we'll get to Carrie's question, followed by Michael's, and then Geraldine, you've got a question or comment, so we'll get to you at that point. Carrie had asked above here in the chat, will you be at Midwest Dreamin, which is obviously, it's a Trailblazer community event, not so much a Salesforce corporate event. So that's a great intro to kind of talking about the difference between Salesforce corporate events like World Tours or Dreamforce and a community event like a Dreamin. Could you kind of break that down and also let us know if you're going to be at Midwest Dreamin?
Yeah, I would love to. So my dogs see something really exciting outside. So if you hear them barking, we'll work through that. I don't have plans on being there, no, but it does sound like something I would love to kind of check out. So David, let's put that. I want a little more information about that. Yeah, so there's different pockets, right? So there is like the corporate structure that I was talking about, and then there's the Trailblazer structure on the side. We do run them a little bit differently. I feel like personally there should be a little bit more crossover, to be completely transparent and honest with that question. And also I'm not super knowledgeable about the things that you all do and the way that you guys are structured and what you do and how you run. So this is just like a really great learning opportunity for myself as well, to say, yeah, I think that there definitely is an opportunity for some cross-functioning between the big corporate events and the trailblazing events as well that you're talking about specifically.
Yeah, and if that's great to know, and definitely opportunities for collaboration. For those that may not be aware, like I said, the corporate events are things like World Tours, which is essentially a trade show. Trailblazer DX, formerly Trailblazer DX, Dreamforce, and then those are all obviously funded by Salesforce. And then the Trailblazer community comes together, folks that don't necessarily work for Salesforce, to put on events that they sponsor, like Dreamin events. And so there's a Northeast Dreamin, there's a Texas Dreamin, there's a Florida Dreamin, there's a Midwest. They're all across the world. And so there's opportunities to attend both types of events.
I love it. And David, can you ask who puts those on? Who runs those functions?
Yeah, so it's usually a group of folks that are very active in the community. Like for my in my case, the Northeast Dream, and I went to the first one, which was a couple years ago. It was actually a few folks from Salesforce, folks like you and me, but also there were folks that were customers and partners that came together and said, hey, we really want to have an event where we can celebrate, New England, or I guess the Northeast, not so much New England, but the Northeast, and have, learning events and guest speakers, very similar to say a Dreamforce, but not so much on the salesy side, more so on the learning and network side, kind of like the Dreamforce learning sessions. It's basically just that.
Yeah, David, if I may add, in Texas, we have Stephanie Herrera and all of these active groups, they kind of moved us to the side and said, hey, Salesforce, we got it. And they're the ones who run Texas Dreamin.
Yep, but these events are all over the world, and you can actually find them by going to Trailhead and going to the Trailblazer Community tab, and there's an event section in there, and you can search by your location, and it'll show you all the in-person events, all the virtual events. Some are virtual, some are actually taking place in person.
Fabulous.
This
I love it.
This has been really, like, I'm trying to keep up with chat, everybody. It's been great. I want to get to Michael's question, and then Geraldine, and then we have a question from Lindsay.
Keep them coming.
Yeah, we'll go from there. So Michael asks, when you're prepping for your first role, should I focus more on learning the platform or getting my LinkedIn profile perfected?
That is a really great question. Okay, so you're talking to someone, and this is going to be a totally different perspective, people. I had no idea what our platform was or what Salesforce actually really did. Let's just be honest. When I got my foot in the door, I was like, I'm going to be an executive assistant. I need to work on office skills. So it was, I used my office skills, right? So it was spreadsheets and sending emails and those types of skills that actually got me through the door. Slowly then, while I was in Salesforce, I would learn, okay, here's some of our programming. Here are some of our products, and these are how the products work. But not necessarily needing to dial in on those things. I would say, first off, a great LinkedIn profile is fabulous, because what that's going to do is that's just going to attract somebody to you. And I don't want to say basic skills anymore. I don't know why people say basic skills anymore, because those basic skills are actually very needed skills. And I wouldn't have had the opportunity in Salesforce had I not had those skills, right? So I would say, going back to those, and I'm going to say basic because I don't even know what else really to call them, essential, maybe we call them essential skills, are just as important as learning any product skills in your first steps.
Yeah, absolutely. You coming into a role with solid soft skills, which are honestly harder to teach than the hard skills, is where you want to be. You can't teach character, you can't teach personality. So developing, being able to develop relationships, being able to, to handle change, all those kind of skills that we get throughout our careers, whether you're military or not, those are the skills, to Teri's point, that are going to be most important. And then you layer hard skills on top of that, and certainly, that those are also important, but easier to pick up. Case in point, most of us have, that have transitioned to the ecosystem did so fairly quickly, getting a bunch of certs and then getting hired. And we were able to do so because we had those soft skills as a base layer. So I absolutely agree with Kelly's comment. And she says, hey, Michael, it'll depend on the role you're applying for. If you already had the skills, then focus on LinkedIn, but if not, then focus on the skill. So to both Kelle and Teri's point, if you're coming in a non-technical role, then you don't necessarily need to know the platform right off the bat. To Teri's point, have those soft skills, ready to go, and that will carry you. But if you're coming in as an admin, or if you're coming in as a solution architect or a solution engineer, yeah, you do have to have some of the hard skills. And so it really becomes the point of doing both at the same time, and budgeting time for LinkedIn, and that personal branding, which is critical, but also budgeting time to learn. So let me scroll down here, and then one more comment, and we're going to get to Geraldine, I promise. Michael had mentioned that veteran Dreamin is coming up, and he's looking for volunteers to help out with that. So if you want something for your resume, community involvement, an opportunity to network, that's a great opportunity. Michael, I'm definitely interested, so hit me up afterwards. But Geraldine, over to you, and then we'll touch on Lindsay's question.
Thank you, David. Hi, Teri. So funny, I come from an HR background, and I'm now working as a success manager at Salesforce. So I get a lot of questions in a couple of different ways. One's from transitioning military, asking, I did HR on the military side, how do I transition into a civilian HR job? Because there's a lot of differences there. So just some tips and tricks, or some areas that maybe they could focus on. And then another question I get a lot, especially from military spouses, is the remote possibility for employee success or HR type jobs at Salesforce.
Great questions. I'm going to start backwards. I'm going to start with your second question first. We've really adopted a work from anywhere mentality right now after COVID. And that's across the board. That's for any position that you're in Salesforce. And basically in ES or HR, as it's known, we're taking that approach as well too. So a lot of our HR jobs, ES positions, may have like a specific state or location or place, but they also can be done remotely. So we have a lot of folks that participate in specific areas that are working in totally different states with that area. And it's just part of what we call our flex. We're calling it flex. It's flex agreement. It's flex between your worker, you working, your team, whatever team you get on, and the commitment you have to each other to make that job work. And to make that job work out of the office, maybe in a different state, wherever you may be, it's a commitment. It's a commitment to each other and to the team. And so we are rolling that out. We've been rolling that out for a while now, since after COVID. And I don't think we're really ever going to go back to that. This is where you have to live to have this job here in this position. I don't think we'll see that again. No. Now let's go to your first question, which was, let me reiterate, coming from a military career into more of a civilian career, and what perhaps might be some tips and tricks. If you're talking to someone who doesn't have that military experience. So for me, when I hear that of all of you, to me, those jobs are like, oh my gosh, so amazing and so like advanced and like particular and wonderful. Like I can't imagine civilian jobs being as high of a standard, if that makes any sense. But I know that the transition must be very hard and scary because of that, just because of what I just said, right? I think knowledge base, keeping yourself educated, know the company you're going in for, know the department that you are wanting to be in, do your research online about it. There's so much information online that you can really look up, HR, at Salesforce or ES, and you can learn all sorts of things, and make sure you like arm yourself with those tools before you go into the interview to be able to speak of, oh, yes, I know what Salesforce does, but I know specifically what this ES department does, because you went and you did your research on it and you looked at it. I think that helps in the transition, and kind of like just kind of know your market, know what you're going after. That would be one suggestion.
What are some questions that you ask or what you look for, since you're a hiring manager, Teri? What are some things that you look for when you're interviewing for a position on your team?
That's a great question. What attracts me right away when I'm in interviews is communication skills. So I'm a huge fan of tell me about I want to know about you, like if you can speak about yourself, which is a very difficult thing to do. I feel like if you can speak about yourself and you can speak about your strengths to whomever you're sitting with, you'll be able to speak about anything. Because speaking about yourself and what you're really good at is a hard pill to swallow that I still struggle with today. I mean, I could tell you a million things that I don't do well, but when you're like, well, what are you good at, Teri? I'll be like, let me think about that. But the folks that really can articulate on that are so teachable. And I love that. So that really, when I'm in an interview, it's kind of like the first thing I pick up on, is that confidence and that ability to just kind of speak about yourself. Of course, there's the hard skills, like David was saying, can you can you log on to a computer? Do you know what Slack is? Do you know how to send an email? Do you know how to respond? All those kind of like things that, we take for granted, those types of things, how fast can you keep up? This is a really Salesforce and a tech company in general are very fast moving entities, and sometimes the work isn't just like, okay, it's constantly coming at you. So it's just the ability to keep up with a fast pace. But yes, those are just the things that I kind of latch onto.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Notice how I don't look at a resume and say, wow, they're a Harvard grad, or they have like XL, TZ, like initials after everything. Like those things to me are very important. Please don't get me wrong. People work very hard for super credentials and stuff. And likewise, that should be noted, but it is not the first thing I look at.
Yeah, that's a great question, Darryl, and thanks for covering down on that, Teri. And to your point, Teri, it's really those skills, those soft skills that are really meta skills that are going to carry you through, your interview, your career, things like learning how to learn, so knowing where to go for information, being able to teach yourself new skills. Organizational skills far and away have been the best skills that I could have had to launch myself in this ecosystem, and it helped me time and again throughout my career. So if you're very well organized, that's going to obviously be a huge asset for you. And then to Teri's other point, telling your story is hard. It requires practice. It requires constant practice. So if you've done it in the past and you haven't done it for a while, you got to break it out again and get good at it again, which you can do with yourself, with a spouse or loved one, but just continuing to tell your story over and over and over again until it's second nature. Because ultimately, when you're interviewing, you want the people that are interviewing you to imagine what it would be like to work with you, and obviously to like you and to resonate with you. And the best way to do that is to be confident, to be approachable, and to be able to talk very easily about yourself and what you've done without stuttering or stammering. So all good things. So what we'll do here is we're almost at the point where we break to take a quick picture. But before we do that, we'll tackle, Lindsay's got a couple questions, and then we'll do the picture. And then Michael, I do see your hand raised, so we'll get you after the picture. So Lindsay asks, what's your favorite event to plan for? And what's been your favorite that you've hosted and why?
Oh, gosh. Well, I think one of the most, there's so many. I think one of my favorite events to plan for is we have at Salesforce, we do a year-end celebration. So most of our larger hubs will have a gathering. We used to call it a holiday party. We're trying to, be inclusive of that now. We just call it end of the year, kind of get everyone together thing. But I love doing that in markets. I love doing it, like, let's take example, Indianapolis, where I sit. We do a year-end party for all 2,000 employees that sit in Indianapolis. And I really get to find a location. I get to think about a theme. I get to incorporate volunteer work. I get to just pull in other people. I love that event. We've had a couple really good ones. We actually pulled one off this year. We haven't had one in a couple of years because of COVID in person. And that's a really tricky thing to do virtually. And I still can't figure out how you would do a year-end gathering of 2,000 people virtually, but we did it COVID friendly this year. And so there were a lot of hoops to jump through. We had to make sure that the venue we were using had folks that were serving us or helping us that were vaccinated, which is a hard question to ask from an engagement person going to a company saying, oh, hi, are all of your employees vaccinated? It's not really a question, especially state by state, that people can answer. We had that challenge. We had mask wearing challenges. We had all of our employees were vaccinated, and they were all tested 24 hours prior to coming to the party. So you want to throw that layer on top of, okay, what kind of food are we eating? What kind of music are we having? What kind of theme are we going to do? Was extremely, extremely challenging this year, but it really, really worked out. And then what we partnered with for volunteering for this year was we happened to be holding the party over Martin Luther King weekend. So a lot of our equality groups, right? I tapped into our Bold Force group and I just said, hey, then this is the part of my job that I love. You know, we're doing this for everybody. It happens to be Martin Luther King weekend. Like, what's a good cause? Is there something that we can all rally behind to support your equality group, to have volunteer for our employee, for everyone that's going to be there and make a difference? It won't be a big splash, but it could be something. And I want to weave it in to what we're doing. So we did come up with a foundation for children in underrepresented youth in the area. And we were able to raise donations during the party for that organization. Things like that feel so good to me. And the party itself was great. You know, it was great food. The best part, I think, was being able to physically be with each other and that. So those year-end parties, now that they're kind of creeping back, are really like, they're special in my heart because I can really branch out and do everything about our culture and pull it together in one event. So it is one of my favorites. It is one of my favorites.
Yeah, I think to your point, the world is kind of hungry for human reconnection because we've all been virtual. Quick funny story: I went to company kickoff in New York City, about 3 weeks ago, and I actually met someone who was on a project when I first started at Salesforce before I switched roles. So what had happened was I joined Salesforce. I went through this 8-month project. I switched roles to become a solution engineer, and never actually met anyone on that team, even though I worked with them every day for nearly a year. Come to company kickoff, and my PM, Anastasia, who's actually going to be co-hosting a future session, was standing right there. I'm like, we ran up and we hugged, and it was such a great experience. So I can definitely identify with the fact that those, not only the giving back events, which are obviously awesome, but just the events where you can see the people and interact with them face to face that you've been spending so much of your time with on a more personal level. That's fantastic.
Yeah. And I think it's important, you know, I mean, I think it's really important to have that connection. I do. I mean, it's kind of how I thrive. And I think a lot of people too, just have personal connection with people. It's great to look at your face on a computer, but there certainly is something about being in person and shaking someone's hand or saying hello in person that just feels really good. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. All right, folks. So Michael, before we get to your question, just a real quick one from Lindsay. Do you travel? Do you have the opportunity to travel in this career path, Teri?
Yeah, I do now. Now that I've kind of moved into management role, I find myself doing a little more traveling. David, I was in New York City for kickoff as well. Too bad we didn't know that. Would have loved to say hello in person. And I've also been able to go to my markets and be there, talk to leadership, and be able to meet employees. So yes, I have been doing a bit of traveling. So it's kind of exciting. And I'll also add, it's kind of nice because I am now an empty nester. So my daughter just left me to go to UK. Yeah, she's going to Kentucky to go to college, and I am here all by myself with the dogs. So the perk of traveling a little bit with the promotion really helps get out for sure.
Awesome.
For a second, I thought you meant UK as in England.
Oh, I know. That's why I had to throw out the Kentucky thing, because I was like, people are going to think she left the country. No, she's a wild cat. She's a wild cat, as they call them. Oh, who's the UK alum? Jeff Douglas. Nice, Jeff.
Small world.
Yeah, it is. Great school.
All right. So Michael, you've been patiently waiting. You have the floor.
My curiosity is about, should I be changing up? I know I've heard about a lot of people. I've looked at Brad's Salesforce, and a lot of people have 2 different LinkedIns, one professionally and one for a different route. So should I be doing 2 different LinkedIns, or should I not worry about my current one and just make it Salesforce-y, since that's the direction I want to go?
Yeah, great question. Teri, did you want to take a stab at it? And I can follow up, or?
Yeah, I mean, a couple things that come to mind. You know, my LinkedIn also was that way in the beginning because I was a meeting planner. So my LinkedIn was connected to the job I'd been doing for 11 years, which was meeting planning. So it was strictly like scheduling. So it's scheduling executives in meetings and then scheduling their travel. It really wasn't much to do with, I mean, employee engagement and or events, but I had experience doing those things. And I think what I did was in some of those, if you spend some time in LinkedIn, I think there's areas so you can write about experiences or things that you've done, or perhaps even somebody that wants to give you a recommendation that might not necessarily be about AV. Maybe it's about something in particular around the AV thing, but it was something else that you did. It just shows more color. You know, it just shows that, you know, yes, you've got this concentration, but look at these other things that you've done. That would be one suggestion I had, because I felt the same way with my LinkedIn and the meeting planning title.
Yeah, great point. And I'll piggyback on that to say, you know, Michael, there's a little bit of risk, right? If you're in a current role and you want to maybe make that jump to a different role, social media is social, so people are going to see it. And so there's some great comments actually in chat. Derek is inviting you to look at his profile for ideas. Kathleen mentions that you know, she's pivoting as well. Check out her profile. And to Kathleen's point, she's absolutely correct. There are definitely ways, she says, to use the Salesforce language without being outright. And so, yes, I mean, you can publish content on social media. You can participate in social activities in the Salesforce ecosystem without basically announcing that, hey, I'm looking for a new position. And the ways to do that are to earn certifications, right? Because you're upskilling. There's nothing wrong with that, right? You can go to events and you can share the fact that you've been to events. And that's you know, community networking. There's no big deal around that. You don't have to come out and say, hey, I'm looking for a new role and you know, who's hiring. But you can you know, create. I would not necessarily create a brand new LinkedIn profile or try to manage two, right? That's a lot of work. Use your current LinkedIn profile. Simply add Salesforce connections over time. You know, pick like 10 a day folks you want to connect with. Send those connections out. To Elio's point, always include a brief introduction so that they know who you are and why you're connecting, and build that network. Start going to events when you can, when it's safe, both virtual and face-to-face, to have that, you know, that personal interaction. Upskill and talk about it, you know, in general terms in social media, whether you're earning badges, whether you're earning certifications. And you know, I wouldn't necessarily, if you're worried about what folks at work are going to think about you searching for a new career, you don't have to change your profile headline to, you know, looking for work, or to something like, you know, aspiring Salesforce professional, until it makes sense to do so. When it makes sense to do so, absolutely change it all up, you know, go full force and let everyone know what you're doing. But there's ways, to Kathleen's point, that you can build that, you know, that brand, that Salesforce brand, without announcing that you're going to be leaving your current job. And so, bunch of hands raised and bunches of questions. I think Carrie had the next question, and we'll answer that really briefly, and then we'll go to Elio. So Carrie asks, yeah, what, and I'm looking for her question here because there's so many comments, which is awesome. It basically was saying, hey, how long have you been using Slack, and what did you use before Slack for collaboration? And so, Carrie, you know, we were using Slack probably informally, well before we acquired the company, but we couldn't actually get on it as a platform tool to use for Salesforce until we acquired the company. The deal was done, and it was publicized. At that point, though, you better believe there was a mad flurry of activity to create channels and get set up and begin using that. We used Chatter, and we still do, beforehand, which is obviously one of Salesforce's collaboration tools that's integrated in Salesforce. With the move to Slack, a lot of those internal Chatter groups have closed down, and now Chatter becomes more of a tool that you use when you're in a Salesforce org to communicate back and forth in the context of a record, to get record updates. So Think of like an opportunity record. If you're trying to close a deal, you're definitely going to still use Chatter, but you can also use Slack. So a couple different collaboration tools. Teri, I don't know, did you want to piggyback on that, or?
I think that's so true. My whole life was in Chatter. I don't know about you, David, but Chatter was it. It was how I engaged people. It was how I put out notices. It was my life. I think I was called the Chatter Queen at one point. Or I was famous by Chatter. I don't know. Someone said something. When that went away, we transitioned over to Slack. It's hard to transition to something new. But yeah, I don't even look at Chatter anymore. It's almost like it's non-existent.
Yeah, I think it depends on your role.
Right.
I am certainly in Slack way more than Chatter. But like if you go to the Trailblazer community, those conversations still take place in Chatter. If you go to the military Trailblazer community, those are Chatter groups. So I don't think Chatter is going away, and we certainly.
Are we ever going to transition those? Just curious.
I've been kind of keeping my ear, and believe it, or feel free, folks that work at Salesforce, if you have thoughts on it, to chime in. But the last that I heard, we're not going to go away from Chatter. We're going to use both tools, because, like I said, like when you're working on an opportunity and you want to chat back and forth from SE to AE or solution engineer to account exec, Chatter's the tool for you. But also so is Slack. So there is some duality there. But I don't think there's any plans to get rid of it right away, and we do still use it in other aspects.
Yeah, I'll chime in.
Yeah, go ahead, Elio.
So I've been around since before Chatter was launched at Salesforce. So
you're dating yourself.
The record feed is a component of Chatter, and that's what you have in an opportunity or a case. It's contextual, right? So very hard to go away from that. I mean, my expertise is in Service Cloud, and case feed is extremely important. So I don't think we'll go away from that perspective. The groups, the collaboration, integrations into the org. I mean, we've already seen some of that internally. I don't think that'll go away. So to your point, David, yeah, Chatter probably as we know it might go away. The case or the record feed on object records probably will not go away because of its value. It really is contextual, right? Hey, I'm looking at an account record and I need help from an SC, so I'm going to mention David on that record and said, hey, David, can you look at this record? It's not necessarily just the chat component of it. It's, hey, I need you to check this record out. And now I have a date and time stamp when I ask David for assistance, in an individual record without having to send out an email or jump into Slack or, hey, maybe I do need a bunch of people to chime in on a record. Maybe I will go post that on a Slack channel. So it'll be around. And to Michael's point with having the LinkedIn, just real quick profile. I know people from like a lifetime ago, like 25 years ago, that I used to work at a company for a long time, and they were so afraid to post anything back then in LinkedIn because they thought that somebody was going to fire them. To this day, they don't even have their picture on LinkedIn, and I'm like, you guys don't even work there anymore. Why are you afraid of? So take this with a grain of salt, but showcase the trainings that you've done, network and communicate. It's 2022, right? If people you work with are not in the know, that's a shame. Look, you're building your resume, you're building your marketable skills to improve yourself, and you're engaging folks in a collaboration or in groups. How awesome is that? If they're not seeing the writing on the wall, it's on them.
Yeah, those are great points, Elio. And Michael, you have to ask yourself, do you really want to work for a company that is going to, essentially punish you for wanting to move out and to develop yourself professionally and maybe move on to another career field? They should be celebrating that and helping you with that transition if they're truly interested in your professional development and your value as a person. So just something to consider. And to kind of close out Elio's point, Chatter is not only heavily integrated into obviously the technical solutions that Salesforce presents, with case records and with opportunity records, but it's also part of our culture. So I agree. I think it will be around for a while, but it does beg the question, what are the use cases for Slack versus Chatter? When do you use them? Because there are some redundancies there, and that's one of the things that I'm working with right now as a solution engineer to be able to demo to customers is, what do I show them? Because some of the use cases are the same. So I think as a company, we are still figuring that out, and that will evolve and that will change. But I agree. I think Chatter is going to be around for a long time.
So David, this is what we've been using in the delivery world. So since a lot of our stuff prior to getting delivery is also part of pre-sales, any engagements with pre-sales and stuff like that, I've been doing it under Chatter. And then once we have the phase 0 on and stuff, I will create a channel in Slack for the rest of the sales team and my delivery team to communicate so that everything is cohesive. But yes, I'm operating in both Chatter and Slack. And Teri, yeah. I remember.
Like, blows my mind. Like my hat goes off to the fact that you do both, that you toggle between both. There are things in Chatter that I miss. It definitely had some things that I do miss. But doing both, wow, that's awesome.
That's
Look at
interesting.
So remember, Teri, you and I have about the same time at Salesforce. When we came in at Salesforce, there was maybe 11,000 employees. We're at 75,000. So that has also a lot of noise in Slack, right? There's a lot of groups that we get added to, and you're like, not another group. But then again, I mean, we didn't even double or triple. Not even quintuple. I mean, the growth is incredible.
Skyrocket. And we're about to get bigger and bigger with our last acquisition.
We are. Yeah, it's amazing. Thank you, Lena, for adding some clarity to that question. We could have a session on Slack in and of itself, and that's actually probably what I'm going to do, is invite a Slack SE to come talk about Slack, because that would be really cool. So stay tuned for that in the coming months. All right, we've got a question from Lindsay in chat, and then Sudha has a hand raised. So Lindsay asks, what are your markets, and what are the challenges having markets outside of where you live?
Great question. So, I'm a man. Well, this has just changed within the past 48 hours, but I was a manager of AMER East, which was things like Boston, Burlington, Cambridge, Indiana, New York City, Massachusetts, DC, and then I also took on Canada. Well, now we've had some switcheroos within our department, and it looks like now I'm going to be seeing all of America, so East and West. So it looks like now I'm going to be doing the Texas and all of those areas, as well as the West and the East, and maybe keeping Canada. I am not sure, but yeah, what is the challenge? Well, this is it. It's hard because I've really developed such a niche in Indianapolis. And in Indianapolis, employee engagement to me comes just naturally. I'm familiar with everything. I'm familiar with the employees. I'm familiar with the tower. I'm familiar with our daily ins and outs, right? When I go into another market, every market's different. Every market's different. What I can do in Indianapolis from an employee engagement standpoint doesn't necessarily work in New York City or in Chicago, or vice versa. The things we're doing in New York City don't necessarily work well here in Indiana. So there is a constant bob and weave and transformation of how things are going to roll. There's still the same program that I have to put off in each market, but they're going to look a little bit different based on their location. So it's a challenge. No event's ever the same.
Yeah, so for those of you out there looking for a challenging role where it's constantly changing and you're having access to new problems all the time, talk to Teri, connect with her on LinkedIn. Employee engagement at events may be where you want to be.
No, you may be like, I'm staying so far away from that area after you talk to me. You'll be like, oh my gosh. I did want to put this out there. I'm going to throw out my my email for you guys here too. I'm on LinkedIn, but also I know, you know, there's probably questions that we didn't get answered, and if anybody wants to, they're more than happy to have them reach out. You guys can reach out.
That's awesome. Thank you. All right, we've got 5 minutes left, folks. Sudha, your hand is raised. You have the floor.
Yeah, I'm curious to know how to land the job for women who have a 10 to 15 years of break in their career. I'm from a customer service background in my country. I moved here in 2016 to raise my family. Then due to the employment work authorization, I was unable to work at the time. So now when I am trying to search for a job, I have applied to many companies. I'm not complaining that I didn't get the job, but at least I am not getting a call even for the first round of interview. I'm active in LinkedIn, and I tried for voluntary jobs also. If I try to apply for voluntary, they are telling we cannot give you a voluntary job because you don't have enough experience. If all the companies are telling the same thing, I'm really puzzled how this is going to work. It's not me, means it's not only me. Lots and lots of immigrant ladies, especially from India, they want to land a job here. They want to enter the Salesforce, but we don't know how to do that. We are active in LinkedIn. We are taking our certifications. We are trying to build the apps, but still we are not getting any response. If we get a chance, then only we'll be able to prove ourselves. But we are denied the chance. I can see many articles stating that lot of companies need employees, and if they give offer to the employees, those candidates are rejecting because of very less pay, this, that. But for persons who don't have that much experience, no one is coming forward to give an opportunity. If we are not given any opportunity, then how will we be able to prove ourselves? How many apps we should do, how many certifications we should do, how many badges we should complete in the Trailhead? That doesn't make any sense. Everyone should be given an opportunity. That's what I feel. Even for all of you, if anyone can answer, if you didn't get that first opportunity, what would you be doing now?
Yeah, no, so Sudha, that's a great question. And I want to allow time for folks to respond before we wrap up, because I see that I'm sure Teri has a response. Kelly's got her hand raised. Elio's got his hand raised. There's somebody else as well. So let's jump on that right away so we can provide some feedback to that. Teri, do you want to lead us off?
Yeah, wow. Wow. All I can say is yes. You know, yes, yes, and yes. Like I get it. I hear you. When I first started out, it was that how do I get experience if you don't give me a chance? Like, I don't have enough experience for this job, but I'm not going to gain anything until somebody hires me. Like, it seems like just this black hole. I completely understand. You know, what to do. You know, I think all of these what everyone's putting in there are the right things, but you're right. It's a frustration thing too. It's like, how many certifications can I get? How much can I do? You're right. It comes down to networking. It comes down to, I don't want to say this, but it's not what you know, it's who you know. It's joining groups like this. It's being part of groups like this. It's getting to know the Davids of the world, right? It's getting to know Derek, and it's getting to know Leslie, and it's knowing all these people, because eventually all of this will come back, and it's networking your way through that and not throwing a resume in a black hole that doesn't get a return. I think we've all felt that. I know I have. But there will be that one job. And it might not even be something that you really, really think was going to be the job. It'll be the one, and it'll just give you that leverage that you need. But yeah, wow. I mean, I relate with what you're saying 100%. I do want you to know that, you know, minority woman or not, it happens. It happens to all of us,
Yep. Thank you, Teri. So folks, we are at time, but I'm going to go ahead and hang on so we can get everyone's responses because it's an important question and I do want to address it. Adam has his hand raised and I'm going to come to him in a second, but he mentioned Super Mums, which is in chat. So, so if you're not aware, Super Mums is an organization that takes spouses, usually moms, but also dads, that have been out of the workforce for a long time and puts them through a program, mentors them, teaches them, and then links them up with consulting work. So joining an organization like that, which that's what they do, that's a great way to get back in the workforce.
And I am currently in talent with the Talent Stacker. And one more thing I would like to put here, which when I heard across this, I didn't want to do it, but because I was against it. Many candidates are showing fake experience and getting the job. They advise me, few of my friends advise me, but I don't want to do that. I want to be loyal to my heart.
I would
work. I want the job which I'm getting, I should get for my experience in my customer service or for my certifications, for my badges. That's enough. I don't want to jump into a mid-level or senior level position immediately. I want to go from the scratch. I want to learn things from the scratch. I want to be loyal to myself.
That's absolutely the way you have to do it, because if you put yourself in that position, that mid-level position, without the experience, you'll quickly fail, and you won't be able to carry it.
Yes.
So a couple things here, because we're over time, but I want to get a couple more responses. Megan Tuano was on the call. I'm not sure if she still is. She has a Discord channel for LinkedIn for Salesforce professionals that you can join, and that's a great way to connect with folks to learn about opportunities. Let me go to Kelle real quick here, who has, I think she was the first to have her hand raised, and then we'll go to Elio and Darryl to provide some comments. You have the floor, Kelle.
I empathize with what you're saying because I kind of fit all those boxes, right? I'm a minority, I'm a refugee, I'm a veteran, I'm also a military spouse. So I kind of hit all those boxes. And I also took myself out of the workforce for about 7 years to raise my 4 kids. And when I went back in, my husband actually told me about Salesforce because he was working at Salesforce. And but anyways, to make that long story or journey short, is when I do LinkedIn, I remember taking, I never heard of LinkedIn, and somebody told me about LinkedIn and had this gap in my work experience, because before I was a business analyst doing ERP systems. So what I did was I had to leverage my skill set before, kind of leveraging those skill set, use what you have to try to leverage that particular skill set. You know, whether you were a soldier, there's a lot of program project management work there, so you can leverage some of that stuff, right? So leverage what you have is one thing. The other thing that a lady that I met in a class told me was she worked in HR, and she said a lot of these HR system, they run through a computer, and if you have a gap, they just kind of, they don't even look at you. So what she told me to do was put that I was a stay-at-home mom from this year to that year, and there's a stay-at-home mom company. And so from there, I list all the things that I did, like volunteer at my kids. But, you know, you would put it, instead of saying, you know, I clean the house or whatever, I manage skill, you know, you put it into business terms, business terminology. And that worked for me. And then in the meantime, I networked, like all of you said, I networked, and I actually called up this gentleman, and he gave me an opportunity, and I did 3 projects for him for free. Literally got paid minimum wage, and then from there, just, you know, got picked up elsewhere. But you just keep at it, and you'll get it. And you'll learn at Salesforce. Here I am. So
those are great points, Kelle, and especially about covering your gap with you know the time that you were at home as a stay-at-home mom. It absolutely is a job. There's a lot of skills and a lot of activities that you're doing to keep that family together. So not only will the ATS, you know, not kick you out, but also, you know, it should impress the recruiter as well that you're able to do all those things. So we got a couple more folks with hands raised, and then we will go ahead and close it out. I think Darryl, you were next. Did you have a comment?
Yes, I did. I just wanted to back up what Teri was saying. Sudha, I'm in a similar situation where I have a certification, an admin certification in Salesforce. I'm coming from a military background. I've had 3 interviews, first interviews, and none of them came from LinkedIn. Where they came from was one came from a Facebook group that I think is run by Talent Stacker, where someone was requesting a Salesforce admin, and they put the qualifications on there. I immediately messaged the person with a background. I didn't write interested, period. I messaged them with my background, offered to send my resume. I did that interview last year. I wasn't selected because of lack of experience, but that individual who runs a Salesforce consultancy called me this year for a volunteer position. And then the other 2 interviews I got were from, one was from a Salesforce community group, and the other one was actually from here. So it is, from what I've seen, it is networking. The LinkedIn part is very important because in conjunction with all of those interviews, I was asked for my LinkedIn URL. And in one case, I was actually asked to send my resume through LinkedIn Messenger. So the networking aspect is very important. It's time consuming. I have my kid's 3,000 miles away, so I have more time than most probably. But I put a lot of effort into networking. And one last thing is I'm reading a book right now called the 2-Hour Job Search, which is only reinforcing networking. But what that book does is it kind of focuses on how to focus your networking on have a career goal picked out in a Salesforce ecosystem. Be specific about what you want to do, how to find people who are in that space, and how to network with them. It kind of boils it down to a process. I'm about halfway through that book, and I'm really enjoying that. So Sudha, good luck.
Sure.
Wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Great comments, Darryl. And spoiler alert, the 2-Hour Job Search ends pretty awesomely. I used that for my transition. It is a fantastic book, so keep reading. So we'll go ahead and take, I think we've got Raksha is next, and then we'll close it out this evening. Raksha, you have the floor.
Thanks a lot. Thanks, David. I'm from London, but I will say to you so that, it's the same problem. Everybody says it. I said it, same thing in 2020 and Dreamforce directly. And the one answer I got from Dreamforce very nicely, Raksha, why are you waiting for somebody to give you opportunity? Why don't you create an opportunity? Today, I got my network. Today, I've trained myself, as well as I can proudly say I've trained 100 people who has 30 people that can give you a vouch for it. They can vouch for it and say, I've helped them to do the certification and they got the job. But you need to work hard for it. You need to do your network. Trust me, network is a net worth. We say that all the time, but this is the best way of going forward. I'm not a military person, but I love communicating with them because what you learn out of them is a principle, disciplinary, and discipline always takes you forward. I hope that answers your question, Sudha.
Yeah, sure, Raksha. Thank you.
Thank you, Raksha. And I will say, just to kind of close it out, Talent Stacker is a fantastic program. Bradley Rice works very hard to ensure that his folks succeed. So definitely stay with that. Megan Twana, who had to leave, did put her Discord channel in the links. But if you can't find it, because there's a lot of chatter in there, which is great, hit me up on LinkedIn and I'll send you the link. Keep attending events like this. Go to Salesforce Saturdays. You will absolutely get there, and we will help you get there. So before we close here, I do want to thank Teri so much for spending your time. Teri, this has been one of my favorite sessions, and I'll tell you why. It's kind of a weird reason, but like I spend an inordinate amount of time each week trying to think up questions to ask the co-hosts, and it's a huge source of stress. Like, oh, what am I going to ask? How do I keep it fresh and invigorating? And so, as you know, I sent you like 15 questions. I only asked one today, which is phenomenal. And then like literally the chat blew up, and And Suda had a great question, and we talked about that for like 10 minutes. So great session. Thank you for lending your experience, your expertise, and for chatting with us for this past hour and some odd change.
Thank you. I learned as much from all of you. So this was a two-way street. Thank you for letting me be here. I enjoyed it. I hope I was a little helpful. And again, please, send me an email if a question comes up or you have another thought for me. I'm happy to read and answer.
Awesome. Thank you, Teri. And thank you as well to all of you, who spent your time on your Wednesday evening to come together in the spirit of community and learning. Hopefully we'll see you next week, this time next week. In the meantime, please enjoy the rest of your evening. Have a safe week and take care, everyone.